So today we're going to be talking about estimating percents, because it isn't always necessary for you to find an exact answer when working with percents. For example, when you're shopping, you may not have a calculator on you, so estimating percents is very handy when shopping the sale rack and figuring out how much that shirt actually costs if it's 50% off. Or when you're out to dinner and you want to tip the waitress 20% of your bill, you need to quickly estimate how much that would be. So let's go do some examples. Example number 1. We're going to estimate 20% of $14.72. So we're going to take 20% of, now here, $14.72 isn't necessarily a great number to be working with, because estimation is all about quick math in your head. So we're going to round up because 72 cents is greater than 50 cents. Now, if it was $14.32, we would round down. But instead, it's above 50 cents, so we're going to round up to $15. So now we're going to find 20% of $15. Now, the technique I like to use when finding or estimating percents is to first find 10% of whatever quantity it is you're working with. So here it is $15. Now, 10% is really just 0.1 in in decimal form. So we're going to multiply 0.1 by 15. But when you do this, all you're doing is moving the decimal point, to the left one space. Alright, so let's see here. Our decimal point is right here, so we're going to move it one space to the right, to the left, I mean. So now we know that 10% of $15 is $1.50. So let's review this. So in order to find 10%, all you need to do is move the decimal point to the left one space. So you're moving it to the left only one space, and then rewriting it as $1.50. Now, in order to find, because our real question is 20%, so 20% is only 10% times 2. So what's 20% of 15? It equals 2 times 10% of 15. And we found that 10% of 15 is $1.50. So we're going to go 2 times 150, which equals $3. So now we can rewrite, and we can say that 20% of $14.72 is approximately, now these little squiggle marks mean approximate. They don't necessarily equal each other, these two expressions on either side, but they are approximately. Alright, so we found that 20% of 15, which is approximately 20% of $14.72, is $3. Alright, so that's my technique. Find 10% and then go from there. So let's try another one. Alright, so this example wants us to estimate 132% of 50. Now this is a percent that's greater than 100. Alright, so in this example, instead of rounding our quantity, we're going to round our percent. So 132%, that's not necessarily a nice number to work with, so we're going to find instead 130% of 50. Now, if it had been 136, we would have rounded up, but because it's 132, we round down to 130. So, in this part, we're going to split this up. So we're going to split this percent up. We're going to find first 100% of 50, and then we're going to add that to 30% of 50. Alright, so in this part, we're just splitting up the percent. We're splitting it up into 100 and 30, and then we're just going to add the two together. Alright, so let's first find 30% of 50. Now, just like in the last example, we're going to use our technique of finding 10% first. So 10% of 50 equals, we're just going to be moving the decimal point over one spot. So the decimal point is here. We're going to move it over one spot. So 10% of 50 is 5, or 5.0 if you prefer. Now, our real goal is to find 30% of 50. So 30 is just 3 times 10. So 30% of 50 equals 3 times our answer up here, which was 5. So that equals 15. But that's only for this part. We have yet to find 100% of 50. Now, 100% of anything is just going to be that quantity, because you've eaten 100% of a pie, you've eaten 100% of a pizza, you've eaten the whole thing. So 100% of 50 is just 50. Alright, so in order to find 130% of 50, we're going to take 100% of 50, which is just 50, and then we're going to add 30% of 50, which is 15. So we found it equals 65. So to sum this up, we found that 132% of 50 is approximately, remember those little squiggle marks equal approximately, or symbolize approximately, 65. Alright, so look here, we wanted to find 132%, so this is greater than 100, so your answer should be bigger than your quantity that you started out with. So, is our answer bigger than 50? Yes, 65 is bigger than 50. Let's jump to the next example, which also looks a bit different than the previous ones we've been doing. It has a percent that's less than 1. So in this example, we're going to find 1/4% of 589, but of course, just like in the previous examples, 589 isn't a nice number to work with when estimating, so we're going to round up. So we're going to round to 600. So our goal is to find 1/4% of 600. Just like we're going to use the same technique, just like the previous examples, we're going to first find 10% of 600, which, of course, we now know 10% just means we're going to move the decimal point, which is right here, over to the left only one spot. So 10% of 600 is 60. Okay, so now we're going to find 1% of 600. Now, 1% is just 10% divided by 10. So we're going to take 60, our answer, which was 10% of 600, and we're going to divide it by 10, because 1% is 10% divided by 10. So that equals 60 divided by 10 is 6. But we're still not there. We want 1/4%, and we have 1%. So, of course, 1/4% is just 1 divided by 4. So we're going to have 1/4% of 600 equals our answer from 1%, which was 6, divided by 4. Because to go from 1 to 1/4, we just divide by 4. So 6 divided by 4, in fact, comes out to 1.5. So we now have estimated this. So approximately 1/4% of 589 is 1.5. Okay, so that's the last example. Let's just review what we've done. So in this section, we were estimating percents. All right, and because sometimes you may not have a calculator handy and you want to quickly estimate percents when shopping, when eating out at dinner, you need to quickly calculate how much tip to leave or how much money you need to buy that shirt. So the technique is to first find 10%, and we do that by moving the decimal point one spot to the left. So we've moved the decimal point one spot to the left of the quantity we're working with. Okay? Now also remember that estimation includes rounding. We don't want to work with $14.72 in this section. We want to work with $15. All right, let's go to this next example. Let's just review. We had a percent that was greater than 100. We split that up into 2 parts, but again, stuck with our same strategy of finding 10% first, which we just move the decimal point one spot to the left. The last example, 1/4% of 589, we again found 10% first, and then move the